Hello friends, in this session let us discuss some of the technical interview questions. What is C language in your opinion? Well, this question can be asked in an interview, like they will try to analyze what exactly your understanding level about C language. Yeah, C is a programming language and it was developed in the year 1972 by Dennis McAllister Ritchie at AT&T Bell Laboratories, that is American Telephone and Telecommunications Bell Laboratories, USA. And earlier to C, there were other programming languages like ALGOL, BCPL and B language. B language was developed by Ken Thompson, and most of the concepts of C was taken from ALGOL, BCPL and B. And it is a structured programming language. What is a structured programming language? A structured programming language will take the concepts of like functions, where we will divide a big problem into a number of subproblems or submodules. We call it as modules, a piece of code. Well, printf, scanf, all those are user defined functions, as you know. Right. C is a case sensitive language where capital A and small a both are different, and C is called middle level language because it's a combination of both high level languages and low level languages. And C was invented to write an operating system called Unix operating system. So he's Mr. Dennis McAllister Ritchie. Now the next question will be asked like, what is the difference between C and C++? Well, C is a structured programming language and C++ is an object-oriented programming language. Structured programming and object-oriented programming are the two paradigms which are nowadays. OOPS is a very famous programming paradigm, like Java, C++, PHP, all these languages follows object-oriented programming, where the importance will be given to data. And C follows top-down approach, C++ follows bottom-up approach. In the top-down approach, normally a program will be divided into a number of subprograms or sub-functions, and the importance will be given to data in top-down approach. Whereas bottom-up approach, we will create a template first and then we will create number of objects based upon those templates. And this is the way the bottom approach follows. C is called a middle level language and C++ is a high level language with object-oriented programming paradigm. And that's why C is called as object-oriented programming system. Yeah. The next question can be like, what is the difference between procedural oriented programming and object oriented programming? Like all the high level languages which were built earlier or developed earlier used to follow procedure oriented programming, and later on the object oriented programming came into the picture, where all the high level languages later on they shifted from programming paradigm like procedural to object oriented, where in procedural oriented programming we will write many number of functions and the importance will be given to algorithms, and based upon the algorithms we will create some programs. Whereas in object oriented programming the importance will be given to data, and we will build functions around those data, and we will write within the main function everything, and from the main function we are able to call all the things which are declared in the class, or we are able to access the members which are declared in a class. So the C procedure-oriented programming cannot use external functions very easily because we need to make use of header files concept, or we need to include all the files whichever we want to use. And in C++ or any programming which follows object-oriented paradigm can call external functions or variables very easily. And if you see, there is an example like C++, it takes the approach of making use of data extensively, and protection and security is more when compared to C programming. In C++ we have more security. Now, what is the need of a translator? This might be another question, like what is the need of a translator? Exactly, translator is a program that translates a source code into machine understandable code. As you know that high level programming languages are written in plain English type of statements that must be converted into low level languages which a computer understands very easily. Right. So programs whatever we write in any high level language must be translated into a form that a computer can understand. Right. It can be done using this piece of software, that is translator. Like there are different kinds of translators are available. To say we have assemblers, interpreters and compilers. And the most important translators what we use today are interpreters and compilers. Yeah, what is a header file? Without include header file, can we write a program? Of course, we can write a program. The latest compilers, even though if you are not declaring any header file, the program gets compiled. And as you see, stdio.h, conio.h, math.h, all these are header files which include the macros or the function definitions. And if in order to include all these header files, we have to use the include directive. And in Java, if you see, there are import statements. There we don't have header files concept. And all these header files are to be included in your program such that whenever you are using printf or scanf function, like your printf and scanf, you are informing the compiler about the printf and scanf function from which header file you are making use of them. Like, so there is another program called preprocessor, a program that processes the source code before passing it to the compiler. And all the preprocessor requires the header file information. Yeah, what is platform dependency? Platform dependency is the way where a program can be run on any machine. If it is developed in one machine, that can be run on any machine. If you take an example of C, the latest cross compilers will make your C program to be run on any machine with any operating system. Like if you take Java programming, Java is having this platform dependency feature, as the .class file will be generated from the .java program. So that concept is called platform dependency or platform independency. Platform dependency means your program will not run on any other machine. If it is, for example, if you take, if X is an operating system and Y is a processor, and if you try to execute your program in another machine with some Y operating system and Z processor, it will not be executed. So that is called platform dependency. As you take most of the high-level languages like Pascal, Fortran, COBOL, even your C and C++ are platform dependent. Why? Because it will generate .exe files, all the executable files. If you take the .exe file in Linux operating system, it will not be executed. But this is not the case with modern compilers. As we have cross compilers, any C program can be executed on any other machine with no or little modifications. Next, why C is a middle level language? As you know that C is a combination of both high level languages and low level languages. So that's why C is called as middle level language. And it is a user friendly language, and all the instructions which can't directly interact with the computer needs compilation. That is to be converted into all the high level language instructions must be converted into a low level language instructions. C is portable. Same code can be used on different machines. That is possible nowadays with cross compilers. And the C is small and fast, can be used in place of assembly language. And the C can directly access memory and perform low level operations using pointers concept. So that's why it is a combination of low level and high level. That's why C is called as middle level language. List the different types of C tokens. As you know that token represents a smallest individual unit in a program. In C language, all the combination of characters will form a word, and those words in C language are called as tokens. According to the usage, there are 6 types of tokens. They are keywords, constants, and we also call it as literals, identifiers, string literals, operators, and separators. So what are keywords? Keywords are the reserved words whose meaning is already known to the compiler. Every keyword has its purpose and grammar in use. ANSI C has 32 keywords. That is, the old version of C is having 32 keywords. The latest version is C11, which has 43 keywords. That is addition of 11 keywords to the previous version. All these are the 11 additional keywords which are added to the latest version of C, that is C11. In total, there are 43 keywords as of to date. Yeah. Another important question about what is declaration and what is defining a variable. You see, when you declare a variable, it doesn't mean that int quantity. Let us see here int qty. This is a declaration. And when you give a variable explicitly, that is called as defining a variable. A variable is simply to say it's a name of the memory location where a constant value is stored. Like a variable is a name for a piece of memory in the RAM which can be used to store and access the data. The value stored in the allocated memory may change as the program execution progresses. So it is called variable. That is, the value of the variable, the value in the variable changes according to the program execution. And whenever you are declaring a variable, normally two things will happen. That is, the space will be allocated when you are defining a variable, declaring it and means declaring it and also allocating space to hold it. We can say defining a variable is nothing but declaration plus space reservation. If I take int x is equal to 20, this is called declaration. Int x is equal to 20, where x is a variable name, int is a data type, and 20 is a constant value that is stored inside a variable. And x will occupy 4 bytes of data. Why? Because int is a data type which occupies 4 bytes according to the latest compilers. What is a constant? What are the different types of constants? A constant is a value that does not change during the program execution. A constant used in C does not occupy memory. And in order to say there are 5 different types of constants are available in C, they are integer constants. When you declare a value directly to a variable, or whenever you are initializing a value to a variable, that is giving a constant value to a variable. If it is of type integer, then we can say integer constants. If we declare a variable of floating point type, that is called floating point constants. And character constants, string literals, enumeration constants, all these are different categories of constants. Simple to say, constant is a variable that does not change during program execution. Its value is fixed. And in C language, there are 2 ways to declare a constant. Either we can use const, const keyword, or simply we can use hash define. For example, hash define pi 3.14. This is called preprocessor directive. Hash define is a preprocessor directive. Yeah. The next important question will be, what are the different types of operators? Before learning the different types of operators, what is an operator? An operator is a symbol that is placed between 2 or more operands. If it is placed before one operand, that is called unary operator. And if it is placed between 2 operands, that is called binary operator. And 3, ternary operator. And all these are the different categories of operators available in C. We have arithmetic operators, relational operators, logical operators, assigning operator or assignment operator, ternary operators. Yeah. So ternary operator works on 3 operands. That's why it is called ternary operator. It is similar to your if-else statement. If the condition is true, then the statements after question mark will be executed. And if the condition is false, then the statements after colon will be executed. Yeah. Increment and decrement operators, which is another important interview questions, and assigning arithmetic operators, that is plus equal to, minus equal to, asterisk equal to, division equal to, mod equal to, all these are called shorthand operators. If I write a plus is equal to 2, it means a is equal to a plus 2. Bitwise operators work on the bits, bit level, and pointer operators like you have ampersand. This asterisk is called value of operator, and this is called dereferencing operator. Direct member access operator, if you want to access the members of a structure, then we have to use this dot operator. Next we have special operators like size of is also an operator which gives you the size of a data type, and comma operator which can be used to separate 2 or more different variables, and the comma operator can also be used in for loop. And we have hash, this is for defining a preprocessor directive. All these are the different categories of operators. In general, we can say there are 8 different types of operators. Additional to this, we can also mention these are the different types of operators available in C programming. What is the difference between equal and double equal to? Yeah, there is a lot of difference between simple equal to and double equal to. The symbol, the equal to symbol is often used in mathematical operations where if you want to assign a value to a given variable, then we have to use equal to. On the other hand, if you want to check or if you want to find out about the relationship between two quantities, then you can use equal to operator. Like the double equal to symbol is also known as equal to or equivalent to, is a relational operator that is used to compare two values. If A equal to B, single equal to, we are giving the B value will be assigned to A. But if you declare if A double equal to B, then the condition will be checked, which evaluates to either true or false. What are the different types of instructions? Instruction, if you want to write a C instruction, it must be a combination of variables, operators, and operands. There are basically three types of instructions in C. They are type declaration instructions, arithmetic instructions, and control instructions. Type declaration instructions, if you declare any variable, that comes under type declaration instructions. Arithmetic instruction, if you write down the combination of operators, operand, and variables, that comes under arithmetic instruction. Control instruction is simple, like if you are making use of any control statements like if else, nested if else, switch, while, all those comes under control instructions. Without instructions, we cannot write a C program. If you want to write a C program, there must be some instructions which are to be written according to syntax and semantics of a C program. Yeah, what is F in printf? As you know that the input and output statements are divided into two categories, formatted inputs and unformatted inputs. So this printf, F stands for formatted. As you know that the printf statement will make, the general syntax of printf is, the printf will take these arguments, one is format string and list of variables which are separated with commas. Because of this, printf is taking this format string like %d, %c, %f, all these are called formatting characters. So hence we can say printf is a formatting function which is making use of format string. See, in this example I have declared floating point variable which is x, y, z or a floating point type, and x is assigned with some value, y is assigned with some value. I am performing some summation, like I want to perform the addition of these two floating point values which are stored in z. While printing, this z value will be stored into this f, and this y value, this f, and y value will be stored into this f, and x value will be stored into this f. The assignment will be done, or the initialization of values will be done from left to right. And this is a general printf function where f stands for formatted function. Similarly with scanf. And unformatted function examples are gets, puts, getch, getc, putc, all these are called unformatted functions. Yeah. What is a data type in C? There are different data types are available in C. Like we have, and all the data types are categorized into three types. We can say it as primary or fundamental data types. We have integer data types, floating point types, and character types, and there are some more different types of all these types are available. Like integer, we can have int, combination of long int, unsigned integers, only positive values, and unsigned long int integers. And the floating point types, we have float, double, long double, and character types we have char, unsigned char, etc. And there are also secondary data types like we have arrays, structures, unions, enums, etc. So we can say primary data types and secondary data types both are available in C. Yeah, what is the purpose of a main function? This is another important interview question. Without main, can we execute a program? Of course we can execute a program, but we cannot, of course we can compile a program, but we cannot execute a program. So main is a starting point for program execution. So without main, you cannot run a program because your compiler does not understand from where the program has to be started. The function main invokes other functions within it, and it is the first function to be called when the program starts execution. And it is a user-defined function, but we cannot change the name of main from main to any other name. And it is a starting function, and always main function returns by default an integer value. If the function is not returning a value, we have to declare void in front of that function. Void represents the function is not returning any value. And we can also make a main function call within itself any number of, so recursive call is also allowed in main function. We'll discuss about what is recursion later on. So it is a user defined function, as I said earlier. What is meant by type specifiers? Type specifiers decide the amount of memory space occupied by a variable. For example, if you take int x is equal to 10 or auto, static, extern, register, all these we can consider it as the type specifiers, or simply to say that we can also call them as storage classes. And the type specifiers will always decide how much amount of memory space is occupied by a variable. And in the case of integral types or integer types, we can say it also explicitly states the range of values. What is a minimum range for a data type and what is a maximum range for a data type that an object hold or the variable hold. Yeah, how to find size of a particular data type? In order to find the size of a particular data type, there is an operator called size of operator in C. So size of operator can be applied on integers. Size of operator can be applied on any data types, any primitive data types, and even the size of operator can be applied on pointers, arrays, functions, etc. What is local variable and global variable? Variables are categorized into two types, local block and local variables and global variables. If you observe in this program, X is declared as global variable and it can be accessed throughout the program, and X is local variable as we have declared it inside a separate scope or block. Here if you observe int x is equal to 200, when I am trying to print this x value, 200 gets printed, and whenever after the control comes out of this block, whatever x is here, that x is not a local one, that is a global one. So x value is 100 will be printed. So the output will be x is equal to 200 within this block will be executed. Once the control comes out of this block, the control cannot remember what exactly the x value in this one. So the scope and lifetime of x is within this block. Once the control comes out of the block, the scope and lifetime of this x will be ended. So global variables are simple to say. Global variables are those variables which are declared outside the main function, and local variables are the variables which are declared within the function, and the scope of local variables will be within the block and the scope of global variables will be throughout the program. Yeah. What is underflow and overflow, or overflow or underflow in data types? Overflow is a situation like it happens whenever we try to assign a value that is more than its higher limit. As we know that every data type will have an upper limit and lower limit, and assigning a value that is more than its higher limit resulting some wrapping towards negative side. Whenever it exceeds the size, then it will go to the negative side of the value. As you can observe here in this diagram, whenever I try to give, let us suppose the minimum and maximum range of integers, if you consider minus 32,768 to plus 32,767, if you cross the limit of that positive number, then it will go into the negative side. That is called overflow. And any data type, if we are assigning a value that is less than its lower limit, resulting wrapping towards positive side, that is called underflow. This overflow and underflow is also can be used as a terms in data structures. Like if you are trying to insert more number of elements, if already the array or stack is full, then that is called overflow. And if you want to delete an element from an array or a stack without existing or without in an empty stack, then that is called as underflow. So overflow and underflow are these two situations which happens in data types and also in arrays. What is typecasting and what is type conversion? Typecasting and type conversion both are for performing conversion of one data type into another data type. So if you are changing a value of one data type to another data type, it is called typecasting, and it can be happened in two ways, in C or in Java. They are automatic or implicit typecasting and explicit typecasting. What is typecasting and conversion? Both are same or different? Yes, conversion is done automatically and typecasting must be done with the help of cast operator. For example, I want to convert int to float. This is automatic conversion or promotion, because a lower data type or equivalent data type of int can be converted into float. Float occupies 4 bytes, whereas int also occupies 4 bytes. So there will be no loss of data. And sometimes this type of automatic conversion is also called promotion or widening. And as you see, float operands are converted into double, and character or short operands, whether signed or unsigned, are converted into integer. And suppose if you have in an expression, if you have any operand as double, the result, complete result will be double value, and if any operand is long, the result is long value. What is typecasting operator? It is known as forced conversion or narrowing, or sometimes it is also called demotion, where the loss of data will take place. In this, the higher data type has to be converted into a lower data type. For example, int a equal to 500 and b is equal to 70, and I am trying to find the division of this a and b value, and the result value must be converted into float. So whatever I want to convert, that must be placed, the type of the data or the target type must be placed inside this cast operator, so that the a by b value, int and int conversion will be happened into a floating point value, where that floating point result can be stored in another floating point variable result. So this is how we are going to perform casting. Casting will be made with the use of cast operator. What are control flow statements? There are basically two types of control statements are available in C. They are conditional and unconditional. If you take an example of conditional control structures, we have decision making statements and iterative or looping control structures. Again, the decision making statements can be of if statement, if else statement, nested if else statement, else if ladder, switch case, combination of all these. Like we can write down the nested switches and also nested if else statements, and there can be a combination of all these control structures within there. And iterative or control structures, the need of iterative or control structures will be to execute a statement many number of times according to some condition. Like if you take do while, for loop, all these are iterative or control structures. And we also have nested for and combination of nested do whiles, nested whiles, and all the combination of for, while and do while is also possible. And there are some unconditional control structures. We have jumping or skipping control structures. There we have go to statements, break, and continue. What is a go to statement? If you want to execute set of statements many number of times without using looping conditions, then you should go for go to statements. So go to is we can say that go to is a keyword in C language which can be used instead of while, do while, or for loop for executing many number of statements according to some condition. So it works similar to your do while, or for loop. What is a break statement? Break can be used inside looping statements, and break can be used in switch statement, and we cannot use break in simple if statements. In the if statements, if you write break, then it will give you a compile time error. Break will immediately make the control to come out of the block where it has declared. Continue is also a jumping statement or skipping control structures, where it will skip the statements after the continue, and the control again goes back to the test condition. Yeah. So equal to, as we said, equal to is very different from single equal to statements. When is a switch statement better than multiple if statements? Simple. If you take an example, when we can prefer, either we can put this question in this format: why switch statement is preferable than nested if else statements? A switch statement is generally best to use when you have more than two conditional expressions based on a single variable of numeric type. If you take x is equal to 1, we are comparing the x value with 1, 2, and 3. So this condition must be checked if we are providing x value as 1, and this portion will be skipped. But if you take switch statement, it is called multi-way branching, where the code is very easier to read and maintain. That is a very simple difference between while switch and if nested if else statement. Switch, if you pass a x value as 1, then according to the passed expression, the case label will be matched, and those statements after those case labels will be executed. And this default can be placed anywhere, and the order of cases can be of any order: case 3, case 1, case 2, and randomly we can write down any order. And the most important thing about switch is we can pass either characters, we can pass either integer values as expression value in switch. What is iteration or looping in C? A loop is a process to do a job repeatedly with possibly different data each time. Normally, if you take a looping statements, three conditions are very important: initialization, updation, and incrementation or decrementation. Initialization, condition, incrementation or decrementation is nothing but updation value. So these three conditions are very, very important. Initialization, without initialization, you cannot continue the execution of the loop, and there must be a condition so that after meeting the condition, then the control can come out of that loop. And initialization or updation is mandatory because we want to update the incremented value, so that according to the incremented value, every time the condition will be checked and the set of statements gets executed. So a condition must be present to terminate the loop, otherwise the loop will go into an infinite loop. What is the difference between while and do while? The important difference between while and do while is, in the while condition, first the condition will be checked, and this is called pre-tested loop, and if the condition is satisfied, then the statements after the while will be executed. If the condition is not satisfied, the control will not enter the while block. Whereas in do while, the condition will be checked at last, and even though the condition is not satisfied, at least once the control enters the block. So this is called pre-control loop, and this is called post-control loop. And simply we can say entry control loop, and this do is called exit control loop. And the do while loop is preferable if you want to continue with your input, if you want to ask the user, like for writing interactive kind of programs, and if you want to ask the user to enter the number again and again, such kind of situations we can make use of do while loop. Can you explain the difference between a normal variable and a pointer variable? Yes. A normal variable is simple, it will hold a value, whereas a pointer variable is a special variable which holds the address. As I said, pointer is a variable that stores address of another variable, where a pointer is a variable, that's why the pointer may also have an address that can be stored in another pointer. So a pointer to a pointer is also applicable. Normal, in simple way, we can say that a normal variable is a variable that holds only a value, whereas a pointer variable is a variable that stores the address of another variable. And here in this example, you can simply have a look about this example. Here variable is declared with a value inside it as 50, and 1001 is its address. And if I try to print, and if I try to store the address of this 1001 in another variable, that is pointer variable, that can be stored here, and this pointer is also having another address. So if you want to get back the value which is there in this pointer, then we have to use dereference operator or star operator. This is asterisk operator, and if I print star ptr, then I will get the value which is there at that particular location. Star ptr can be treated as star of 1001. So that will give you the value 50. Star of 1001 can be treated as value at that particular address 1001. The value available at that particular address 1001 is 50. So that's why star ptr prints 50 as its value. If I try to print ptr, ptr will give you the value 1001 directly, because ptr holds the value 1001, which is nothing but indirectly the address of variable. So the difference between pointer variable, normal variable is that pointer variable holds the address, whereas normal variable holds the value. As you know, this is another important question in the concepts of functions. Function is a self-contained block of statements which are written to perform certain tasks, and there is a difference between call by value and call by reference. So normally when you write a function, after writing the function, you have to make a call to that function from another function. Usually we'll make a call to one function from another function. Like if you have a function, user defined function, we can make a call to that function from main function. So from main function, when you are calling another function, that function is called as calling function, and the function that has been called is called called function. If you see an example, there are two ways we can call a function, and all the functions can accept parameters inside them, and some functions will not accept parameters. While if you take an example of call by value, calling a function with parameters passed as values, this is called call by value. Let us declare int a is equal to 10, 10 is stored inside A, and I'm passing this A value to a function called fun. So when I pass this value A will be stored inside this function, and always remember this A is called as actual argument and this A is called as formal argument or dummy variables. Function of A is nothing but we are calling a function called as fun function by passing a value A to it. So A is passed by value. That's why we are calling it as call by value. The most important difference in call by value is if I make any changes to this A here, like A is equal to A plus 10, this A value has been changed here itself, and whatever changes I am performing to this A value inside this block will not affect the actual parameter. So the changes are not made here, only the changes are applied to this block. So we can simply say that in call by value, the changes that occurs in the formal parameters, these formal parameters will not affect the actual parameters. So any modifications that are done within the function is local to it and will not be affected outside the function. And this is call by value. Call by reference. Calling a function by passing pointers as parameters or address of the variables is passed instead of variables. If you see here in this call by reference, we are passing the address of A. Let us suppose the address of A is 1001. And I am passing this 1001 to the function as a parameter. So this address is stored inside a pointer, as a pointer is capable of storing the address of another variable. Now I have declared here pointer variable, and star 1001, this star x is nothing but 1001 value. So directly we are passing the address, so any changes that are made in this function will directly affect the function values, will directly affect the actual arguments. So we can simply say that in call by reference, whenever there are changes happened in the formal parameters, that directly affects the actual parameters. So any modification that is done to the variable A here, or x instead of x, we can say simply x is having the address of A. So at the address level we are making changes, and any changes are made at the address level that directly affect outside the function also. If I try to change x value, x is equal to star x is equal to 20, when I try to print the A value here, I will get the changed value, that is 20. So changes in the formal parameters will directly affect the actual parameters. This is call by reference. Now, what are printf and scanf? Is it call by reference or call by value? Yes, printf is call by value and scanf is call by reference, where we are passing the address of variables in scanf, and we are trying to print the actual values that are stored in the variables in printf function. So simply we can say that printf is call by value and scanf is call by reference. What is recursion? This is another important question. A function, if it calls itself, then it is called recursion, and such type of functions are called recursive functions. In this example, I have written a block called recursion. In this simple example, recursion is a function, and after printing the recursion, again the function will be called recursion. How many times? Infinite times the function will be called. If the function is calling itself, then this concept is called recursion concept. Using recursion concept, we can implement towers of Hanoi problem, or we can implement like factorial of a given number, GCD of a number. Such kind of applications we can develop, where the function calls from another function can be avoided, and within the function call will be made. Then to come out of that function, we have to use return statements. Right. What are the different categories of functions? Functions with no arguments and no return values, function with arguments and no return values, function with no arguments and with return values, and function with arguments and return values. What is these categories? Now let us see with simple examples. And in this category, I have declared a function without any arguments, and this is called function with no parameters and no return value. If this function is returning any value, then return must be the last statement, and we can only return only one value at a time. We cannot return multiple values. So whenever you are returning a value, then there must be a return type. We are not returning any value, that's why this function has to be declared with void keyword. And in this example, if you see, there is a function called print your line with two parameters. One is character type and one is integer type, and there is no return type. And this is a function definition which is having function with the function body, having function with parameters and no return values. And in this example, function with return values and parameters. Yes, this is a function which is having a argument and it is returning a value of which type? Floating point type. So here the return type is float. And this is another way of writing a function with arguments and with return types. And there is another keyword like function static keyword. The purpose of static keyword is very interesting one. And the static integers, if you are declaring a variable as static int x is x and without initializing a value, the value will be initialized with a 0, where static is called as, we have auto, extend, static and register. Okay, all these are nothing but what? They are called as static keyword, auto, extend, int, storage classes. So storage classes or auto, extend, static and int. So static integers, if you are not defining it, they are by default will be stored with 0. Same static variables can be declared many number of times, but only one of them has to be initialized. And there are some rules to be followed when we are declaring static variables. The most important thing is static, which is defined as a local variable, does not lose their values between function calls. The meaning is that if you declare a static variable inside a function, while making a call to that function, always the control enters that function, and whenever the control is entering the function, the static variables will not be reinitialized. The old value will be retained by the static variables. In simple way, we can say that they are global variables but scoped to the local function they are defined in. This, let us have a look at this example. I have declared a static variable. Any number of static variables can be declared, but one of them must be initialized. And this is a local static variable, and I am printing the I value here itself. So when I am trying to print I value, it will take the value from the local static variable. That value gets printed. Now let us have a look at this second code. I have declared a static variable as a global variable, and I am declaring this I is equal to 5. This is, I am reinitializing the value of I with 5, and I am trying to print this I value in the for loop. And again, we have declared static int a is equal to 10. Anyhow, this code is very interesting. Whenever the control enters the block, always this statement will not be initialized. Only once the value gets initialized, and int a is equal to 10 will be stored in the a value, and we are trying to increment the I value, and this statement gets printed 5 times, and always 10 will not be printed. So for the first time 10 will be printed, later on the 10 value is changed into 11, that is static variable. So that is the speciality of static variable. The value will not be changed. Again, whenever the control comes to the for loop for the next iteration, the value again will not be initialized with the 10, because that is the main property of a static variable. So int a is equal to 10 will be retained with a new value called 11, and that 11 value will be stored as a static variable value. What are macros? What are its advantages and disadvantages? Macros are nothing but it's a simple abbreviation for lengthy and frequently used statements. If you are repeatedly using many number of statements many number of times in code, then we can make those statements as macros. And whenever the macro is called, the entire code is substituted by a single line through the macro definition of several lines. So the basic thing is, the advantage of macro is that it reduces the time taken for the control to transfer, as in the case of function. If you write macros, then the complete code will be substituted at your place. For example, if you take hash define pi 3.14, this is a macro. Pi value will be substituted with 3.14 whenever we are making use of this pi value in our program. So that can be a simple example of a macro. And the disadvantage of macro is complete code will be substituted. In order to avoid this, we can have a concept called as DLLs, dynamic link libraries. So, and also it is not recommended to use macros several number of times. Why? Because unnecessarily all the data gets pasted into your program. So the size that will be generated, the generated.exe file will have a lot of unnecessary things that gets pasted into your code. What is a scope? This is another important question. Scope refers to the visibility of a function or a variable. So if you declare a variable outside the function, then that is called global scope. That variable is having global scope. And if it is declared within the function, then that is called as local scope. So it can be either global scope or local scope. Simple to say, local scope means within the function. Global scope means outside of the function. Very important interview question can be like, what are the different kinds of storage classes? There are 4 different types of storage classes: auto, extern, static, and register. Where the auto so whenever we consider storage classes, the important things that has to be remembered is where the values will be stored, and what is the scope, and what is the lifetime, and what is the default value given to those storage classes. Like if you look at this block, like table, we have auto is a storage class where all the automatic variables, if I declare int x is equal to 10, x is of automatic type, and x value, if I am not initializing the value, then garbage value will be stored in auto variables, and the storage place is CPU memory, and the local scope, the block where we are declaring the auto variables, and the scope of that variables will be within the block, and the lifetime will be only within the function. When the control comes out of that function, the scope of those local variables will be lost, or the lifetime of the variables will be lost. And external variables are similar to your global variables, where the storage space is simply CPU memory, and if you are not initializing an external variable, then by default that external variables will be stored with 0, and the scope will be global scope, and the lifetime will be till the end of the main program. The lifetime will be till the end of the main program. Once the control comes out of the complete program execution, then the external variables will have its lifetime ended. Static variables. The static variables, as just now we discussed, they are stored at CPU memory only, and if you are not defining a static variable, or if you are not declaring or initializing a static variable, then by default 0 will be initialized, and the scope of the static variables will be local, and it retains the value. As I said, as it retains the value of the variable between different function calls. So always whenever the control enters the block, whenever the control enters the function, again and again the static variables will not be initialized. The static variable will be initialized only once. So we also have one more storage class, that is register. If you declare any variable as register int x is equal to 10, this register value will be stored inside CPU registers, and if you are not initializing the value into a register variable, and by default a garbage value will be stored, and the scope of this variable will be within the block or local, and within the function, if you are defining a register variable, we can make use of that register variable within the function. And this is all about storage classes. If you remember this table, then you can answer it in a very well manner. Yeah. Coming to arrays, what is an array? Array is a collection of similar data items stored in consecutive memory locations, and all the array elements will be of similar data type. Similar data items, that is the main disadvantage of arrays. Why? Because we cannot store different data items, like one is integer type, one is character type inside an array. So array index always starts from 0, and we cannot give array size as a negative value. Int a of -2 is not possible. When you try to give a negative value into an array, it will give you an error, compile time error. So negative values as a size is not allowed in an array, and the size represents the number of elements that can be stored inside an array, and it is also called as a dimension. If you declare an array int a with square brackets, inside that if you declare some number that represents the size of an array. Yeah, the way we declare an array will be int a of 2, it represents a single dimensional array, and we also can have 2 dimensionals array, like which represents rows and columns order. And the most important thing about array is, if we are trying to read the beyond the size of the array, then that is called overflow condition, and if you try to delete the elements from an array, from an empty array, that is called underflow condition. And the most important thing about arrays is, arrays cannot store cannot be declared with a negative size, and array index always starts from 0, which is a positive value, and all the elements will be stored in consecutive memory locations, and all the elements must be of same type. That's why we can say array is a homogeneous collection of elements. And if you, this is another important interesting question, that is, what are the merits and demerits of an array? Merits are nothing but the advantages. We can easily access each and every element of an array, and no necessity to declare too many variables. The main necessity of using arrays is, using a single variable we can store a single value, and using arrays we can store multiple values of same type. So again, no necessity to declare many number of variables. In that situation, the arrays come into the picture, and arrays elements are stored in continuous memory locations. And if you get the base address of an array, by using pointers concept, you can able to access each and every element from a different locations of a cell, of an array cell. The main disadvantage of an array is the wastage of memory space. If I have declared array with 100 elements, and if I try to store only 5 elements, remaining 95 locations gets wasted. So disadvantage is wastage of memory space. In order to avoid that, we have to go for dynamic arrays, where we will create the arrays using pointers. That is, by using malloc, cloc functions, we can declare the arrays, and we can declare the size at runtime. And all the declarations what we made for an array int a of 2, that is called static declaration. If you make use of pointers concept to declare the size of an array, that is called dynamic memory allocation, or dynamic allocation, or dynamic arrays. So another main disadvantage of arrays is we cannot store different data items. Only similar data type elements can be stored inside an array. What are pointers? This is very important interview question. What are pointers, and what is the need of a pointer? If we try to print, let us suppose if we have a variable int x is equal to 100, and if I try to print the x value directly, I can able to print the value directly by using this x, like printf %d, and x gets printed. But indirectly I want to access the value of the variable, then that is possible using pointers concept. The definition for a pointer can be like this: a pointer is a variable that stores address of another variable, and using pointers we can indirectly access the value of variables. And the main advantage of using pointers is to access array elements. We can make use of pointers, and with the pointers we can also make function calls. With the pointers we can access the structure variables. With the pointers you can pass the arguments to a variable, like it can be used in call by reference, and it can be used to implement simple data structures like trees, graphs, linked list, etc. So these are the advantages of using pointers concept. Simple to say, pointer is a variable that stores address of another variable, and by using pointers we can indirectly access the values of variables. Let us see a very simple way of accessing the pointer variables. If I declare a variable in this manner, now let us suppose I can declare a value as x is equal to something like x is equal to 10, and I try to, this x value, let us suppose this x value will be stored with some 10. Along with this 10 I can also have some address 1001. The 1000 will be the address, and I declare one more variable as int star ptr. This is a pointer variable. This is a pointer variable. When I try to print this pointer variable, pointer is again a variable, so we can have ptr is again a variable where this 1001 will be stored. How to do that? We can simply say that ptr is equal to ampersand x. Ptr is equal to ampersand x. So this x value will be 10, but ampersand x value will be 1001. That is stored in this ptr variable. So ptr is again a variable. Ptr is again a variable. That's why we can simply say that ptr is again a variable. That's why simply we can say that this is having an address 2001. So we can simply say pointer is a variable that stores address of another variable. When I try to print x value as this, in this manner, x is equal to 10, and PTR is giving what? 1001, and simply star PTR will give you star of 1001. Simple, we can say that star of 1000 is nothing but indirectly at 1001 what is the value? 10. So 10 will be printed. Simple to say, we can simply say that whenever we are trying to print the x value, we will get directly the value of that variable. If you try to print star PTR, it is another way of printing the value of the variable, but indirectly we are printing, that is by using pointers concept we are printing the value. What are derived data types available in C? Like we have function types, array types, pointer types, structure types, and union types. So these are the different types of derived data types that are available in C. Structures. Already we have arrays concept, then what is the need of structures? The main difference between arrays and structures is arrays is a collection of similar data items, whereas structure is a collection of different data items. And using structures, it is a user defined data type which is used to store heterogeneous data, that is data of different type under unique name. And in order to declare a structure, we have to use struct keyword, and the variables which we declare inside the structure are called as members of the structure. And always the structure will be terminated with a semicolon. So let us see this structure. In this structure, struct student. Student is a structure. Student is a structure, and this is called as tag name, and this is called as tag. So this char name, course, year, all these are nothing but members of the structure. All these nothing but members of the structure. And name, course, age, year. If you observe carefully, this S1, S2, S3 all called as structure variables. All these called as structure variables. And what is the size of the structure? This will be another important interview question. What is the structure variable size? The structure variable size can be the sum of all the individual members which are there in the structure. If you take character 1 byte, so 64 plus 128, in the latest modern compilers the size of integer will be 4, so that's why 64 plus 128 plus 4, again for the year 4 bytes plus 4, so that the sum of all those values will be the size of the structure. So S1 will have the same size, S2 will have the same size, and S3 will also have the same size. So here we are trying to store values of student type into S1, S2 and S3. So it is we can simply say that it is a combination of different data items under a single name. So this is the purpose of using a structure. And again, structure, difference between the structure and union would be a structure will have the size as the sum of all the members which are defined inside it. The sum of all the members sizes which are defined inside it. And the union will be only the highest member which is having the size would be the size of this union variable. And see here, all the combination of this is 2 bytes, this is taken for old compilers, 2 bytes is taken for old compilers, and now we can simply say that 2 bytes is taken for old compilers, 50 bytes, 50 is the size of the array, that is title, something like this. So as we know that 50 which is of character type, so 50. Next, author, pages, price, all these things we have different sizes. So according to that, the size of the structure variable will be. How to use arrays with structures? See here in the previous example, I want to declare 3 students information, 3 student records. I have declared 3 student variables of structure type, but I want to store 100 student variables or 100 students information or 100 student records. It is not a feasible solution to declare 100 variables of structure type. At that situation, I can make use of arrays with structures. I want to store information of, if you see here, I want to store information of 2 students here. So record of 2 represents two students information I want to store. So whenever I want to store the value of the first record, simply I can say record of 0 dot id equal to 1. This dot operator is called member access operator, which is able to access the members which are defined inside the structure. And record of 0 dot id is equal to 1 represents the first student record, and the record of 0 dot name comma Sitaram. So this Sitaram name will be copied into record of 0 dot name, that is the first record will be stored in this value. And always remember, directly we cannot initialize the structure member. Like if it is a character member, then we cannot directly give a student like a string value directly into a character array as it is a part of a structure. You see here, name of I want to store the name here. Simply I can make use of strcpy function, which is available in string.h. This point you need to keep in your mind. Right. Next, record 1 dot id equal to 2, and here I am trying to print different records of the student. Like I am going to copy the Rakesh name into this record 1 dot name. If I want to print the value which is there in this, like I want to print all the student records, second student records, then I can simply in the printf I can write id equal to %d comma record of 1 dot id. In the similar manner, I want to print the name of the second record, then record of 1 dot name. So in that manner, I can simply have any number of records. I want to print 100 records. Simply we can make use of for loop to print all the 100 records. And here we can see here student record of 2 represents student record of 2. This represents an array of student records which can hold only 2 records. If I want to print 200, then I can write down here 200. So this is an example of showing how we can use arrays with structures. What are self-referential structures? Another important interview question. The self-referential structures are those where one structure variable will be used. The self-referential structure is nothing but a structure variable itself will be the member of the same structure. If you see here, student is a structure. Student is a structure, and this student variable will be taken as the member of the structure. And whenever the variable of the same structure is taken as its own member, then that is called self-referential structures, which refers to itself. And whenever I am trying to print, this is a pointer. As you know this is a pointer which points to all the members of the structure. So suppose if using pointers, if you want to access all the elements, then simply we can see here. So this is a student, s1 is equal to next is equal to ampersand s2. That is address of this student variable I am going to store in this next variable. So by using that next pointer variable, I can able to access all the elements. Now s1 dot next using this dereference operator I am going to print. So s1 dot next is a pointer variable that is accessing the name value that is also a part of the structure using dereferencing operator. This is called, arrow mark is called dereferencing operator. So using pointers, if you want to access any members of the structure, then you have to use dereferencing operator. And the most important thing about self-referential structures is a structure which refers itself is called as self-referential structures. How to access, just now we discussed about how to access pointers in structures. We have to make use of dereferencing operator. We have to make use of dereferencing operator like arrow mark. For instead of period operator, we have to use this arrow operator to access all the members of the structure. And in the previous example, if you observe here, next is a pointer that is pointing to the same student record or student structure. By using this s1.next is equal to ampersand s2, I am passing the address of this s2 variable. That is s2 is nothing but student type. That address I am going to pass to this next variable. Using this next variable, I am able to access all the members which are there in the structure using this arrow mark operator. So that is how we are going to access the pointers, using pointers, the members which are declared inside a structure. Yeah. So let us see another example where we have a student book book, struct book, and book is of what type? Structure type, and we have name and price as the members of the structure book. And I am declaring a structure variable. B is of structure type book type, and I am passing the address of this structure variable to a pointer. Now this pointer indirectly it can access the members of the structure, and using pointer I am setting the name for this name field, and I am also setting the price for this price field. So whenever I try to print this value, ptr name represents the name stored by using pointer. So I will get ANSI C by Dennis Ritchie and 500. This output is obtained by using pointers to a structure members. So this is how we can able to access indirectly the structure variables values using pointers concept. Yeah. The another difference between union, what is a union? The union is simply to say union is a user defined data type used to store data under unique variable name at single memory location. The main difference between the union and the structure is storage, where as I said, union will have the highest data type. Whatever data type is having as the highest data type as a member of this union, that is the size of the union. And in structures, all the sum of all the members will be the size of the structure. Take this example. If you have a look at this example, struct employee, char x, float y, and e is of what type? Employee type. And character occupies 1 byte, float occupies 4 bytes. The size will be 5 bytes. For the e is an employee type which is having the size 5 bytes. If you see an example here, character is occupying 1 byte, float is occupying 4 bytes. But the size of this e will be only 4. Why? Because x and y both shares the same memory space, that is having with the highest data type. But here individual elements will have individual memory locations will be allocated. So in this union, if you remember this simple diagram, then you can clearly mention the difference between a union and a structure. In union, only the allocation will happen like the largest one will be allocated as a storage space. Yeah. This is another important interview question. What is a dangling pointer? If any pointer is pointing the memory address of any variable, but after some time the variable has been deleted, still the pointer is pointing to that position, and such kind of location, if the variable is not available, still the pointer is pointing to such location. Such location and such pointers are called dangling pointers. And this pointer is a problem which refers to an unexisted value. So that's why this is called as a dangling pointer problem. Simple to say, a dangling pointer is a pointer that is pointing to an unavailable variable location. This is how. Previously, this A is stored with 25, which is having some address, and this 500 is stored in this pointer. Later on, this A is removed from the memory. Still, pointer is pointing to that unavailable variable. So this concept is called dangling pointers. Next, we have wild pointer. A pointer in C which has not been initialized. If you are not initializing a value, to have a garbage address, then this is called as a wild pointer. Here you see we have declared a variable, but without this pointer is not able to store any value. So this pointer is not able, we are not initializing this pointer with any address. So such kind of pointers which have not been initialized, which has not been initialized, is known as wild pointers. Next we have one more important interview question in pointers about pointers is, what is pointer to a pointer? As I said earlier, a pointer is a variable that stores address of another variable, and here you see A is a variable having 25 as its value and 4024 is its address. If I store this address into another variable, then I have to declare one pointer. Star ptr is equal to ampersand A. Meaning is that A address is stored in ptr. So ptr is stored with some address of A. And as I said, pointer is a variable, it will also have an address. If I store the address of ptr in another pointer, then I have to declare 2 stars. And if I want to store the address of this pointer, then I can declare 3 stars. And if I try to print star ptr, it simply prints the value of A. If I print star ptr, again the value of A only, and star ptr. So this is something like value at that particular address, and star ptr will give you the address of this ptr. Inside the address we also have a value, so it can be treated as star of pptr. Simply we can say that it will also give you the value which is there in the address, but it has to pass 3 values, 3 addresses. So a pointer to a pointer is simple to say. If a pointer is capable of holding the address of another pointer, then such concept is called pointer to pointers. You see here, I address is stored in this ptr2 and this ptr2 address is stored in this ptr1. So I want to access the I value means I have to write star star ptr1 and then star ptr2, then I can get the I value. Yes. So what is the purpose of a data structure? It is another important recursion. Data structure refers to a scheme for organizing related pieces of information. And basically to say, we have different types of data structures are available. Without using data structures, if you want to organize the data, we have files, list, arrays, and records. And we also have like linear data structures, non-linear data structures are also part of like data structures. And the basic thing about data structures is the way we organize the data in a manner such that the retrieval is possible, the storing of data is possible, and searching of data and all the operations can be possible. So these are the different categories of data structures, like we have arrays, linked list, queues, stacks, binary trees, and hash tables. And the difference between linked list and stacks: linked list, we can able to create linked list by using pointers and arrays. And the queue, as you know, queue is following FIFO order, first in first out. Stacks, LIFO order, last in first out order. And the queue, linked list, arrays, stacks, all this comes under linear data structure, where the data will be arranged in linear order. And binary trees and hash tables, this comes under non-linear data structures. Hope these questions will give you some sort of basic idea for your interview preparation. Thank you. Thanks for listening.